This is It's an Inside Job, and I'm your host, Jason Lim. This is the show where we explore the stories, strategies, and science behind growing resilience, nurturing well-being, and leading with intent. Because when it comes down to it, it's all an inside job. Well, welcome back, folks. Welcome back to It's an Inside Job. I'm your host, Jason Lim. I appreciate you showing up for another week and allowing me to be part of that week. Well, I have a very special episode this week. She's a returning guest, and she's been on 2 other episodes, one in Season 1 and in Season 3. She's also a close friend and a business partner. But today, I am not introducing her as a consultant or that business partner. I'm introducing her as an author. So today I am both excited and honored to introduce and to reintroduce Agnes Cserhati. As of January 25th, 2024, just to put a stamp on this in case for any future listeners, Agnes will be launching her first and her exceptional book, Performance Advantage, 12 Successful Principles Every Senior Leader Needs to Know, but Executive Courses Don't Teach. This episode marks the first exclusive interview exploring the rich concepts within the Performance Advantage. In this episode, Agnes will bring us an inspirational story, a testament to resilience and success, forged from her extensive global experience in leadership. Her journey is not just about professional achievements, but also about personal triumphs, making her insights all that more relatable and powerful. We are going to dive into the behind-the-scene insights on what it takes to be a published author and the challenges and the victories that come along with this journey. Agnes will share her invaluable tips on resilience, the critical process of unlearning, and the bravery required to carve your path in today's dynamic world. So this episode is a must-listen for anyone who aspires to elevate their leadership skills and personal growth. So without further ado, folks, let's slip into the stream and meet author Agnes Cserhati. Well, welcome back to the show, Agnes.
Thank you very much, and very warm welcome to everyone.
Today, you're not showing up as a consultant nor as a business partner. You are showing up as an author.
The title is The Performance Advantage, and many would say, what does that mean? And anybody who has perhaps written a book or has a family member or knows somebody's written a book, the title is probably the last thing you actually do, and it's not that simple. So what it means is it's performance advantage, so gaining advantage through performance. And I will probably explain a little bit about that as we continue this interview. But just to give a little insight, the book had 2 other titles as I was writing it, and I'm very happy to share, because we're here to learn and nobody is perfect and it's a journey. So the first title was Leadership Inner Circles, because I run leadership inner circles, and I think leadership is not a long journey, but it's a journey through others, with others. So which is also in this book, but the title isn't that. Then it was The Next Level. Now, because taking yourself to your next, I should have been your next level. But then I realized that all of it is correct and all of it is in here. But actually what the essence is, the key to all is how do you create this advantage through performance and understanding what performance is. So it is the performance advantage.
Maybe we can begin. I think everyone understands performance, but perhaps from the concept or the context of the book, can you operationally define, as to the extent you would like, what do you mean by performance?
So I see performance as a process. Now as a process when you're consistently performing at your best. So it's focusing on continuous improvement, perhaps personal growth as well. So it's really this focus on the process. And I think it's important to also contrast here with achievement. Because, of course, achievement refers to a specific goal or perhaps a milestone you reach along the way of this performance journey. So achievements I see them as important markers of success. And it's not about one is better than the other, but there is a distinct difference. And it's your commitment to high performance or performance actually that drives your excellence and this sort of sustainable success. I often call it as dancing with excellence, if that's perhaps a better way to express it.
So to simplify what I hear, just to make sure I understand. So the achievement's the goal, it's crossing the line, but the performance is the actual run to get across that line, or the journey, or the trip, or the sojourn. And a high performance individual, although he or she is focused on getting across the line, achieving what they are set out to achieve with themselves or as a team, the major focus is on the efforts and the action to get there, on the process. Is that what I understand you're saying?
Absolutely. And it's all about, at this point, when we're talking about high performers or successful individuals, how do you improve yourself? How do you, if I use your analogy, how do I get across that line faster? What do I do? And without dissecting the process, without looking at every element really, and looking at marginal gains or smaller shifts, at this point, there's not some major breakthrough very often at this level. So I think it's where the focus goes. And I often say where focus goes, energy flows. And really is, what is it? What is the tiny thing, tiny shift that creates the biggest impact? And if coming back to your analogy, biggest impact so that I can cross that line perhaps earlier. And you will cross that line. So it's, don't think that, we ignore achievement here. Actually, through focusing on your performance, you're gonna and likely to achieve much better and higher results.
It's interesting because I work with a number of professionals, and some of them are very dedicated to their sports. Some of them are professional in professional sports. Some of them do it as a hobby. And when we sometimes talk about their challenges, I find that when they're talking about the corporate challenges or their organizational professional challenges, they're constantly focused on performance. But sometimes we pull an analogy or a certain aspect from their life when they're training, whatever that sport may be. And that's always broken down into generally three things. It's performance, it's practice, and it's pause, or resting and such. How important is, like, performance? A lot of people think about performance as when they just execute on habits. They execute on what they know to get the best results. But practice, that's where we can enhance the minutia, the little skills that help us with our performance. How does that work into your philosophy of performance? And maybe you could expand on that.
Absolutely does. But I also like to say that, when I talk about high performance or performance, and they're not synonymous, but just for simplicity for today, I'm not talking about everybody performing at the same level. And absolutely not. That's nonsense. I mean, but performing at our best, reaching our best potential possible. So that's also important to understand. And what does it entail? How do I get to my best? It's very, very different. Of course, there is a lot of science, a lot of research, a lot of experience comes into, and we know much more than we did perhaps before. But I think the question I'm always asking, what do you do when people are already successful? What do you do when they're already doing well, using a common terminology? How do you then? Surely you would also like to grow and develop. What's then? And I think that is those subtle differences. That is where your performance advantage is critical. So identifying those subtle things, and that may be rest now. So it's again, it's not performance. I don't mean constantly doing. That is not what I mean by performance. Now, how do you actually perform at your best? That may be for a leader, for example. It's not about just doing, leading, succeeding, getting the next job. It's about how you look after yourself. What about self-leadership? I talk very often, not just in the book, but everywhere. Because I always say, without you, there is no leadership. So if you don't look after yourself. So I think it's important to say that this is the difference between achievement and performance, and the process focus versus, what have I done? How fast can I run once? Can you repeat it consistently? can you deliver that consistently in a way that is sustainable and it doesn't damage your health? You don't have burnout. So it's now, that's what I mean. And that's where I think is important to tackle this challenge. This is an exciting challenge, but is a challenge, particularly for high performers, because they often looked at, are you doing well? So surely you know not everything, but surely you know not, you're doing well. But nobody is doing well forever. It's a competitive world out there in any, whether it's sport, whether it's leadership, whether it's life now, or just look at, I know this is not the book about, but just look at parenting. I always say, I'm a mom of a 16-year-old. I always say, Max, this is an experiment. I'm learning on the job, and by the time I learned, the context has shifted. So it's very much what is my best performance now at that particular time. So it's not something static I look at also in a business context.
No, I think that's very important because, a lot of people who have a lot of experience can completely relate because just over the years of experience and knowledge, this resonates with them. And then you have young leaders coming up through the game. And there's sometimes that mindset or that fallacy where people think performance is, I have to constantly give 100% when I'm on. Sometimes I think as your book is broken down into 12 chapters, and each of those chapters addresses different issues of performance. And one of those chapters is on self-awareness. And I think that is such a relevant thing. It's to understand that sometimes you'll come into the game, you'll come into work or the office or whatever you do, and you'll understand that, today I'm feeling like a little physically drained. And that maybe performance that day is 70%. And maybe 70% is good enough. And I think it's very important what you're saying is that sometimes we need to self-regulate and to understand, to become self-aware of how we need to shift gears and maybe redefine what performance is that particular day, if not that particular week. I was wondering, what do you think about that?
Well, absolutely. So I don't see performance as perfection. So that's why I said dancing with excellence. And you know what? Somebody said to me who reviewed the book and say, and what kind of dance would it be, Agnes? I said, well, often it's an Argentine tango. Which is, I think, slightly complex, and the legs can get tangled very quickly, and sometimes it's not so. So I think in my world and the high performers world, that the people you work with, it often is that. But I certainly think you're looking at a longer term here. So you're not looking at an achievement. You're not looking at today, have I achieved? Today is you don't take one data point. Now, of course, if this day happens over a period of time, we need to look at where does that come from. But it's not about one data point and taking a reaction on that. And I have experienced that, and I'm very, very open about it. And I think it's important also that experienced leaders like ourselves also open and don't perfectionize the journey, because it's far from perfect. And I had my own challenge just simply writing the book. So I used the same techniques myself. And yes, not every day was a perfect day, a perfect data point. But overall, looking at the performance, that's why looking at the achievement is really a sort of not an efficient way on a long term. Now, it's an indicator. Yes, you can note, you can acknowledge that today wasn't my bad day, what was my best day rather than a bad day. But to jump on conclusion for that tomorrow is going to be, or what was it yesterday, that's another journey. So take the data point, observe, and you will see, if you are reading or will read the book or listen to it, because it's also an audible, it's full of observations. And I didn't use that word randomly because I couldn't come up with another one, because I think observation is a really important aspect of what we are talking about, this performance and self-awareness as well.
So if I could just shift gears, I'm speaking to you as an author today, and one of the questions I always like to ask authors is, what motivated them to write the book? So I pose the same question to you. What motivated you to write this book?
If you've ever wondered why billion-dollar brands like Kodak, Blockbuster, and Tower Records became corporate catastrophes, a new podcast called A Case Study in Corporate Fear has done the forensics and revealed that the real culprit was fear. Fear made Kodak bury its invention, the digital camera, and persuaded Blockbuster to pass on buying Netflix. It's a podcast that's been called True Crime for Brands. Listen to A Case Study in Corporate Fear today and learn how others failed so you never do.
Well, fascinating now to look back, because the conversation I started with the publisher, and I think she also remembers, I said, this is not I very strongly stated through Agnes style, said, this is not an ego journey. Mm. I don't need the book for the book. And I'm sure she was thinking, well, I'm curious, but then why talk to a publisher? And I said, my mission's always been to share, to inspire, and make people think differently. Mm. And to be brutally honest, as I've been around, you've been around for a little while, should we say? And the more successful you become, sometimes the less accessible you are. And if I'm on a mission truly to share, to inspire, I really need to had to unlearn and look at myself and saying, what am I doing for this now? Or am I just stating this in my speeches, in my trainings, in my corporate trainings and coaching? But how do I truly share to inspire? Do I really fulfill that need right now? Perhaps 10 years ago, it was enough what I did. And how do I make all this accessible for all those who perhaps don't have the opportunity to work at an organization that bring me in or listen to things. So it wasn't an ego journey. It was a motivation to fulfill that mission. And I did need to have a bit of a conversation with self to take that journey that, I don't want a book. I don't need a book. I want to share, to inspire. And the book is the way to continue at this point of my life. And I think that's the whole honesty. And I'm very grateful that I had a publisher who understood that.
I just like to kind of backtrack. You had a curious term in the process of writing this book, you had to unlearn. I was wondering if you can unpack that and kind of, what did you have to unlearn?
I would say lots, but definitely I think I had to unlearn that people write books for different reasons. And I had completely the wrong idea, by the way, now. Completely, and I resisted it for such a long time. So I had to kind of unlearn that understand that what it means to me. I also think I had to unlearn and perhaps let go is in combination of that was the biggest challenge in the whole is to let go a little bit of my own story and perhaps not just write. If now I decided to write these 12 principles down that I've been, sharing with many around the world, I was adamant, absolutely adamant, Jason, that I am not going to feature in this book. And anybody who was part of the early journey, they can say the editor, the publisher, because I want this to be 12 principles. If I want to be a book about my journey, my life journey, my philosophies, that's a different book, I kept saying. And my development editor said, that's a shame, Agnes. And I kind of took that, I trust her. And then the real shift and unlearning and bravery started, I suppose, when the publishing editor read the first the first part as a sort of initial review. And she's highly professional. This is what she does every day. And apart from some notes, she made a very personal comment at the end. She said, my favorite is principle 3. And not because it's the best principle, it's because you are in it. And that really scared me, if I'm brutally honest. And I thought, maybe it's time to unlearn, reflect, and listen to others, and perhaps let go a little bit. But then, of course, that required my bravery and lots of resilience. So it became a very different journey then if we spoke in March, I signed the contract with publisher 23rd of March. If we spoke in March or February, which we have actually, I would have said it's a very different journey. And I'm grateful for the shift, the unlearning, and I'm grateful that I was able to let go, I think. Well, hopefully that's what the readers and the listeners will also think when they read it.
And just to let the listeners know, I believe principle 3 was resilience. Was it?
Correct.
Right. Just to state what that is.
Well, so that's the only one that first I let go. It's interesting. You pick up a very, very astute point here, because that's the one where I kind of let go first. And then the rest started from there, really.
I mean, that in itself is a big challenge in writing a book. Was there maybe a bigger challenge on this sojourn you had to put thought to paper?
The other big challenge was, of course, I'm a high performer myself, and you know me, I like exciting ventures, and I like to set myself challenges too. So signed the contract 23rd of March and handed in the sort of manuscript in terms of accepted manuscript to print on the 24th of July, just to be very precise. I just looked up when the manuscript meeting took place. So it's a very tight deadline. And I got the contract on my sort of name, reputation, and the outline. I haven't had a full manuscript. So periodically the question taught, and some people asked me actually, well, how do you know you can write a book? Well, I don't. I didn't. But where does all this self-belief came from? You know, I asked myself, and I suppose this became periodically a challenge, because it's managing my thought, sort of in some sense. But I think the challenge is what not to put in the book, because I have so many years of it, so many stories, so many wonderful leaders I came across, so much to say and inspire. And I do it with passion and love, as you know. So how do I actually, as somebody put it, it should be Agnes in a book. And A, what does that mean? And B, how do I do that in a format that is understandable for those who perhaps don't know me? So that was a continuous challenge throughout this process, apart from the tight deadline.
Yeah, I mean, I think one brilliant thing about books throughout the centuries is that someone can take decades and decades of knowledge and experience and wisdom and concentrate it down into a few hundred pages. And a person who has no knowledge, no basis of anything, can take all that experience, all that knowledge, just if they have the patience to read through it, make notes, and relate it to their life, and they can absorb all of that. And then they can apply that wisdom, that knowledge and experience that your book encapsulates, and they can actually increase their performance, in this case, their self-knowledge, their resilience, their self-awareness, and all the other principles you speak to at a much faster rate, because they will take the knowledge. Yes, it is theory, but it's based on your experience. But for the person reading it, it's theory. But then when he or she applies it to their own life, all of a sudden it becomes knowledge, experience, and they have a reference, they have a context in which to relate, an experience or a contextual relation that allows them to have, okay, this is based on metrics that she's spoken about. And I just find that's why I'm so, voracious when it comes to reading. I just, talk about this. And I think what you've done here is a very good thing. You've taken a couple of decades, if not more, of experience and concentrated it down in a few hundred pages that anyone can pick up or listen to. Let me ask you this. I always ask authors this. Another question is like, what did you learn about yourself? I know you've spoken a little to this, but what do you feel you've learned about yourself through this process, above and beyond what you've already mentioned?
I think I learned, a lot, but definitely I learned about myself that how much I love writing, how much I enjoy. I knew this. Yes, I like writing. I write every day, but writing a book is a different story. And how much I love writing and how much I enjoyed writing the book. That was sort of higher than expected, if I may, despite the tight schedule and the pressure and the expectation that is put on me. But I think the biggest learning throughout this journey is very personal. Now, if I may share this, and anyone will read the book will see that certain people in my family, my grandparents, feature in it. And I think the biggest learning was that while my grandparents, of course, not with us here anymore, that unwavering belief in me, what they instilled as a child, has carried me through. And actually, when I was writing the last sort of chapter or principle, before the very last page, I had to stop. And I thought, where did you have this confidence from to go in and put in that? And I really thought, really nobody is self-made. I'm not a great believer of this. I'm self-made. I may have had a journey of resilience and responsibility. Nobody is self-made. And I think the biggest learning was that what they have gave me as a child, despite a challenging childhood with my parents, my grandparents, instilled this confidence that I felt even now, after many, many years of professional experience. So I think, getting back to your roots, grounded, understanding self, it certainly led to a deeper self-understanding.
And what was Principle 12, just for our listeners?
Yeah. Principle 12 is leading change and transformation. So that's the finishing principle. But I think it was not necessarily perhaps connecting to the principle. It was more connecting to the fact that I'm writing the last principle. The book is finishing. It's a complex work, and I have this wonderful privilege to share my thoughts with others, and it's a huge responsibility. I mean, I don't see as people say to me, "Oh, Agnes, you've written a book," and I'm not quite as excited about that as saying I'm being an author, because I think being an author is a very responsible thing to do, because you're sharing your thoughts. Somebody will read it, and as you very eloquently put it earlier, they will take action, and I hope they will take action, because that's the idea of a book. So I learned a lot about self connection and even deeper, where does that resilience perhaps inside me come from?
But a lot of authors that I find, and this may be for yourself, is that it's not so much a struggle, but it awakens things in them that have been dormant for, it could be years or decades. And all of a sudden it comes rushing back as they take thought and emotion and translate it into word. And words, obviously, they are trying to articulate so the reader understands where they're coming from. And through that articulation of abstract thoughts into concrete words, there's sometimes a catharsis, there's a breakthrough. It's almost like when I used to work with trauma, as you know, it was almost the same process, but obviously this is a much at a higher, different level, because you're articulating to a greater audience and trying to get across these 12 solid principles. Did it awaken things in you that had lain dormant?
Yes, absolutely. And I'm smiling here, and perhaps maybe it can be heard from my voice as well, because the two evidence, should I say, the evidence of it, and I think sometimes a very visible format is how a book started, because it is truly because of that process. So the book started originally with the fourth paragraph, and I won't read the whole, but just for the benefit of the listening, just the tone of it says, and I don't think it's a bad start for a leadership book, but it started, leadership is a journey to be embraced, a journey of privilege, responsibility, growth, and courage. But you don't have to make that journey alone. And this book will be your powerful companion, a must-read guide that unlocks the secret of performance advantage and how you can achieve it. And it continues. I think not a reasonable, but as I kind of awakened, why is this performance I'm so passionate about it and not about achievement? And I think that also came from talking to people like, "Oh, Agnes, you're writing a book." And was not exciting about that, but I was excited about to share, to inspire so many, and what a difference it could make. And I'm so privileged to do it. So I kind of let go. And as you know, but the listeners perhaps not, the book starts now in a very personal way. And if I may say a few words about it, it says, I was 10 years old when I decided to be a high performer. As I sat at the back of my maths class on an ordinary Friday morning, feeling unchallenged and waiting for others to finish their work, my beloved grandfather's words echoed in my mind. Don't be afraid to stand out from the crowd, but don't seek it. In that moment, I understood that conforming to other people's expectations and blending in with the majority would not provide me with the opportunities I needed to learn, grow, and reach my full potential. And I think it continues. So it became a different book. Not the principles remained, but sort of the personal perspective and stories waved in. And I personally think it became a different book because of that self-realization and connection throughout. And I also became braver to share a little bit.
Yeah, it does take the vulnerability is courage, and sometimes it's not easy to do, especially when you're writing to a greater audience. People who may never meet you, but still, they're the sound of your voice on an audio book or the words written on a page will resonate in someone's cranium, right? And it will sit with them. Because I think when you read books such as yours, yes, you address performance and such, but I think where the lessons are there, but I think the real depth, the connective tissue is the author behind it. And I think when you have that connection between, principles and such, as straightforward as they may be, but what it gives, at least this is my perspective, so I'm just sharing my perspective. I think when you have that, when someone is sharing their experiences, maybe even on a personal level as you have, I think it resonates so much more because, as we all know, the brain creates narratives around everything, ourselves in the world. And when I'm reading something, and I hear an author telling me his or her story, or as I was reading your book, then I see myself in that place, or maybe not in that place, but I can make connections. I see connective tissue between what you're saying and what I'm relating to. And I think there's again, this is my perspective, a much more deeper learning, and you actually take away things. It sits at a deeper level. At least, again, as I said, I just want to qualify, that's how I experience reading these kind of books.
Yeah, well, I'm glad that it had that impact, because it really took the biggest resilience, the biggest courage from me to let go. But I had another sort of motive with that, I think, because I was adamant, and I didn't know how to do it. I was adamant not to sort of, yes, if you read my profile or you read your profile, we have now a lot of experience, but nobody has started like this. And I think it's really important to understand, again, here comes the journey, and the journey is your reward. But it's really important to understand that high performance is not some sort of superiority and reserved for the special few. And it's also not saying, because I don't like saying, because I did it, you can do it. That's not strictly also the case. But I think it's important to look at the journey, the challenges, the truth and the reality. Mm-hmm. Because, I, as perhaps the listeners may know or will know, looking at it, I grew up in rural Hungary during the communism. So that maths class perhaps is a different maths class than somewhere else, is where before going to a sort of secondary school or a gymnasium, as we say, I was told that, yes, I was always a very good student, but people like us don't go there to the town. So, it wasn't the environment where tell you, you know all the answers half the time. Agnes, how can we support you? It was the environment of, wow, what should we do with you? I mean, you're not fitting in. So just sit there. And I sat there quietly, and that was my role. I understood it. But I think it's important for people to have that inspiration too. And that's why I often say that the village where I'm from is called Matra Teranje. And I often say from Matra Teranje to the British Library. And that's the journey of the book till then, because a copy of this is in a British library. So that's the journey. And there's a lot in it. And a lot of honesty, a lot of struggle, a lot of imperfections, a lot of wrong thoughts at that particular point of time. And I think I'm sharing that all the way through, that how my belief system have changed. And I think that's important to not to sensationalize success, not to sensationalize performance, because that is not my intention.
So you have this big feather in your cap now. You've just written a book. What will be your next adventure?
Well, apart from learning dancing Argentine tango, which probably will be, I think my next adventure is to be a responsible author who shares, who goes on this journey and connects with the reader or listener, as we have audiobooks as well, and continue to share, to inspire the mission. So I don't plan to change the way I am, the way I'm thinking, but operating wider. I also would like to and will interview leaders from all around the world, because if you read the book, there's lots in it. This is not my story at all. This is many other leaders' story in there. And so I'm very grateful to them as well for coming on this journey. So definitely something around on YouTube on performance advantage and interviewing people on their journey of performance. And of course, continue on my mission to making leaders, organizations, and teams think differently, and really operate already in so many countries in the world. And I just want to reach everybody that, be the best version of yourself. Maybe a cliche, but if you never define what's the best version of yourself, then it's very difficult to get there.
Well said. Now, there's going to be many listeners that are interested in picking up this book. Can you give us some of the details, when it's available, where it's available, how they can pick it up and such?
So the book is available on 25th of January in Kindle, in a physical format, paperback format, and also on Audible, but not just on Audible in terms of audio book, I should say. That's probably more correct. Worldwide available, so you may want to look in your, if I'm allowed to say company names, but of course some of us, Amazon, but Noble and Barnes. It will be on Spotify, Apple. So I made it widely available deliberately. That was also a strategy, not to sign an exclusive deal with Audible, not because I don't think it's wrong and I'm also listening to it, but I understand that many of the leaders that I work with live in different countries, different parts of the world with accessibility. So why limit? So it's available even in my local bookstore here where I lived or walked in. So really, hopefully, easily accessible.
Well, thank you very much for spending some time with me today, Agnes. I think it was a brilliant conversation. I had joy reading the book. I pulled a lot from it, and I'm sure. I know people will pull, these nuggets of experience and knowledge and make connections that will be valuable in their own private and their professional lives. So thank you for your time today.
Oh, thank you very much. It is really very special to have this interview.
Well, folks, that was the freshly minted new author, Agnes Cserhati. Her book, Performance Advantage, 12 Success Principles Every Senior Leader Needs to Know, but Executive Courses Don't Teach. It stands out as a vital resource for anyone eager to elevate their leadership capabilities and personal development. And it's available in all formats, paperback, audio, and digital. And from my perspective, folks, I would highly suggest you pick up a copy. It's a great read, and there's so much to learn and so much to pull from it that you can apply to your own professional and private lives. I will be sure to leave all the links in the show notes, as well as the contact and social media links to Agnes's profile. Well, here we are, folks, crossing the finish line of yet another episode. A fascinating episode this week, too. If you found this episode insightful and other episodes helpful in any way, please subscribe. Please share this with others. It is one of the best ways for me to spread the word of equanimity, resilience, and the ability to build well-being. Well, thank you for showing up for another week. And as I said at the top of the show, allowing me to be part of that week, of your week. And until the next time we speak, keep well, keep strong, and we'll speak soon.